All right, I think we are about ready to get started. Johanna, I'm here from RunSignup. Thank you guys for joining us today for Eric's presentation on hybrid events. The goal of this is really to help you guys figure out how to make some decisions for what you're going to do with your fall races and how to keep your event flexible and able to pivot if you need. Everyone is muted throughout the session, but we do really want to encourage you guys to engage with each other, with us. You can use the chat function to talk to each other, to ask questions. Herman is also here from RunSignup to help answer questions that are put in there. So if you don't have time for questions at the end, we will also be answering them throughout. Session is being recorded. We will share the session publicly. That means that you don't have to worry about missing things if you forget to take notes. Also, if you are currently on a webcam and you absolutely don't want to show up anywhere in the recording, you can just hide your webcam at the bottom of your Zoom session. Eric?
Thank you. So as all of you have probably realized, we're in this pandemic that is pretty crazy. So today's session is going to try and give you some opportunities and alternatives and hybrid events. So we're going to run through a whole bunch of different scenarios and ideas on hybrid events for fall races, turkey trots, winter, and potentially all the way into spring for some of you guys that are not able to put on any races in 2020. So as Johanna had said, I'm Eric Cohn. I am a vice president with RunSignup. I've been in the running industry and endurance industry since, well, I'm going to say 2006, maybe 2005. I've done everything from volunteer, race direct to technology. So I've basically timed races. I've done a lot of different things to help the industry. And I take pride in trying to help organizations pivot during this time, but also find technology solutions for very complex issues. And right now, there are a lot of them. So today's topics, we're going to talk about creating contingency plans or plan. We're going to talk about break-even analysis, communicating with sponsors, potentially working with sponsors. There's some of that happening now. Hybrid considerations, virtual strategies, and then obviously a plan for swag. So as most of everyone here, we all would love to have in-person races happening. So I would love to have more in-person races happening. There are some, most of the smaller ones throughout the country under 1,000 participants. Some states are allowing up to 750 as an example. Some have pivoted, and we'll cover some of that. There's definitely still a lot of uncertainty in the space right now, and that is not just here, it's all over the world. So don't feel like it's just in the US. There's a lot of people in the world that are not having races. They're used to it. So what to do? No one knows yet how the pandemic is going to unfold, but what we do know and we do have the ability to do is plan. So a lot of you are race directors that have planned for, plan A, plan B, plan C for in-person events in case scenarios happen at your events that you need to adjust. Whether it's weather, it could be hydration plans for real hot days. It could be storms that come through and you have to postpone or cancel your events. Well, now we're in this think of it as a long storm where you now have to come up with alternative plans. And what we're going to try and do is cover some of the simple one, obviously, is plan A. Everything's going to happen as expected and you're going to be able to put on your event and nothing really bad is happening in your area, and you may get lucky and it might be a small enough race where you guys can pull off and get permits. But plan B might be that events happen, but you want to pivot and allow participants that aren't certain that they want to show up to an in-person. They may feel unsafe showing up, and we see that a ton right now. So a lot of races have pivoted. They're offering caps to the in-person and then unlimited on virtual, and they're still getting percentiles of people doing virtual, and then they're hitting their caps on the in-person. So allowing that plan B that allows you to stay within the social distancing protocols of your local government and having in-person fields and getting the permitting allowed allows you to still have a larger race that helps you economically. So we're seeing those races where they're putting on, let's say, a 500 person and then allowing virtual to get them to the traditional 1,000 person events. So that is happening right now, and we're seeing a fair amount of it. it does allow some of those participants that are uncomfortable in the groups to stay home or race anywhere. So that is one of the primary plans that we are seeing for organizations in areas that can have both live races and have the option to do virtual. Plan C. So a lot of you are in areas that are very strict or don't have a permit that is available to you. So they're either revoked or not allowed for all permits. And some of you also have sponsors that are unable to commit because they too have hit financial distress. So Plan C is a virtual only. And participants are not always willing to participate in person. And some parts of the country, obviously, the pandemic is hitting still pretty hard, and those participant numbers are very low for even small in-person races. So it may be better to actually look at a virtual only. And then in obviously some cases where you may have a larger event, you're not going to be able to satisfy enough people with in-person. So going virtual only is a very good alternative as well. Plan D. Let's just assume some of you probably do not like the idea of a virtual race. So what we have done is we've added all sorts of alternatives that have allowed virtual challenges to sort of replace the standard virtual race. And with a virtual challenge, that can be anywhere from a week long to months long. Most of you probably have heard of the Great Tennessee Race. That's a race across Tennessee. One New York is another. The Great American 5000 is another. There's a whole bunch of virtual challenges that have popped up. We probably have about 15 or 20 that have thousands and thousands of participants. I mean, 5,000 plus participants each, and they're all doing great with their challenges, and it engages that core constituent base of runners and participants, but also expands the reach into participants that aren't normally going to show up to a 5K, 10K, half marathon or marathon event. The other that we've seen a ton of are fundraising only events. So we're launching fundraising only, where there may be free entry into these challenges or virtual races, and they're simply asking for fundraising. So these organizations are raising tens of thousands of dollars with no swag, and they're just having people do fun things together as a community and collecting data on their participants that could be how many miles they've run, how many push-ups they've done, and asking them to fundraise. So this allows you to engage that same group of people, and it could be engaging your volunteers as another way. So now all of a sudden, instead of it being a one day and you're done and you're getting your swag, now you're engaging your group or your audience in many different ways and many different parts of your audience to help you fundraise to make it through the pandemic. So what do you need to succeed? Obviously, all contingency plans need to be based on some form of reality. You need to understand the cost and the benefits of each. So first up, we need to determine the viability of Plan A. That Plan A is obviously straight in person. So doing that, we usually try to do a break-even analysis. Most all of you probably have never had to do this because you've probably had a race that has been mostly financially viable throughout the last 5 to 10 years, even during a slowdown in the endurance space. So what you need to do now is you need to determine who's on board. One, can you get your governing bodies, whether it's USA Track and Field sanctioning, it could be RRCA, if you're doing triathlons, USA Triathlon, are they allowing for you to get sanctioned? Can you get permits and with those supported sanctioned bodies? Is there increases to your cost? Are you going to end up having to limit the number of participants? And that's usually the case. So now all of a sudden you get to that point where it's like, all right, how many participants do you need to pay for your cost? So now all of a sudden you also get to a point where some venues are not open for business. Some cities are not allowing you to close roads and run events. So I've seen a fair amount of organizations pivot to parks, whether they're state or county owned parks outside of cities, to host smaller or in-person events. And that allows for a lot more flexibility to the plan. And therefore you're dealing with one organization to get your permit, and you know that they're open for business. So that has been a big pivot, and a lot of those places are available with lots of space, and some of them have bathrooms and other available facilities for you, but a lot of them are requiring you to bring sanitation, and then you have to factor in all those costs. So if you now are having to sanction a new course and get that certified and pivoting to a whole new location, you have to adjust all your numbers based on that. And then you may even still have a limited number of participants in that case. So when you start to look at production cost, obviously we talked about parks and municipal permits. We're seeing more parks giving permits than cities and other jurisdictions. You have increased cost on signage. If you're going to do road closures, obviously police are a factor to close some of those roads. Medical support can be very hard to come by right now, just on the fact that hospitals are actually hurting more than people realize. So my wife works for a hospital and they've been going through furloughs. So that is a crazy thing to think when you're in a pandemic, but hospitals have been suffering. So finding medical support may not be as easy to do at this time. And then you do have timing fees. So some organizations have pivoted away from timing and gone to more of a fun run, where participants are going to show up. There's going to be an arch, there's going to be water support, there's going to be mile markers and turnarounds and cones, but there's not going to be timing, because that timing is $3 to $5 a person. Just factor in that a lot of timing companies are going to be needed on the other end of this. And also they're the ones that help you set up a lot of those road or courses, whether it's arches or barricades or cones. So you need to come to an agreement with your timing company to make that feasible. The last one is liability insurance. There is a ton to that, and I really can't explain all of the ins and outs of liability insurance. So what you really need to do is either hit up your governing body if they're providing it, or your insurance adjuster who is actually providing liability insurance. There's a ton to that. So that likely is going to be a fixed cost that is going to go up in the near future due to increased liabilities. Some of the scaled costs, obviously, most people know about swag, so the shirts and medals. That's really important to understand. That is probably the only thing that pivots through the whole case of A, B, and C, and D. You know, you're going to have the swag, shirts, and medals for almost everyone, unless you're doing a fundraising one. And at that point, you can decide to do fundraisers get to a certain level, and they get shirts and medals. So that even sticks around for a lot of the fundraiser ones. Porta potties, water and snacks, that actually starts to get a little bit higher in cost to implement water and snacks, because a lot of runners are not going to want to touch things, and you're going to have to provide contained water and snacks, whether it's bottles or touchless devices for providing water. Per runner timing fees, obviously, if you're going to time your race, there are per timing fee cost to that. And then race bibs. So race bibs traditionally are 25, 30 cents for the paper, but then there's a timing chip on that that usually brings it up to $1 to $1.50. So those are some of the example of cost. You do have increased fixed costs. So some of that is for PPP, for staff and volunteers. You'll see people show up with masks, and sometimes it's face guards, gloves, all sorts of things like that. More hours for timing and employees. So when you start to look at an adjusted race for in-person, you're looking at not doing a 30-minute start, but for a 500-person race, or maybe even 15-minute start. Got a 500-person race here in Richmond that is going to take 2 hours to start this weekend. And that is a 500 hard cap, and 2 hours to start 500 people is meaning that the course is closed for longer, volunteers are out there for longer, police is longer, timing people are out there for longer. So there's just a whole variable there that increases your fixed cost. There is a chance that you would have a lower porta potty ratio because you're going to have less people. And therefore, I mean, you're going to need to have more porta potties per person, I should say. But at the same time, you're going to likely have less people. So you have to do the ratios and figure out that cost. That might be a fixed cost that doesn't change too much, simply because your number of participants is lower, but you're going to need the same amount of porta potties with those lower numbers. There is a significant amount of hand sanitizer at these events. So if you start to adjust, consider finding gallons worth of hand sanitizer and ways to disperse that. And then individually packed waters or snacks, as I mentioned. there are organizations like Water Monster that have provided foot pedal based dispersion of water. So you might look into that as well. So you can allow people to bring a water bottle and fill the water bottle without touching anything other than their foot, obviously touching a pedal. So that's an alternative as well. So minimum viability, you sort of have to figure out what is the number of runners, what is that revenue needed to equal the fixed cost plus scalable number of runner fees effectively to put on a race. Some of you may decide, hey, you know what, if we do fundraising with this, along with this, and maybe it allows you to retain some sponsors, that it is break even though the entry fees do not cover your actual cost. And that's sort of in that viability matrix that you're gonna have to build out to sort of build your budget to go, hey, with 500 runners, we're gonna be able to retain all of our sponsors. We're also gonna be able to do a little bit of fundraising to fill in that gap. And we may not be profitable this year. We may actually lose money, but it allows you to go into 2021 with retained sponsors, a name that people will know that you're putting on races, and you're going to put on your race in 2021. And hopefully that's a bigger race to cover the little bit of loss that you may have in 2020. So you sort of have to figure all of that out with in person. Clearly communicating with sponsors is going to be key. If you haven't already been doing this, you need to be reaching out to those actual sponsors. You should have a pretty good relationship with most of your larger sponsors, so don't email them, but instead try and either have a call, a Zoom call, or if they're willing to meet in person and you're that type of relationship person, meet in person with them one-on-one. You know, are they financially able to support the event is a big question you have to understand, and they may not be willing to share that immediately. So you have to sort of do a little due diligence on your own and figure out if their organization is suffering and not capable of supporting you, because you don't want to drag it out. You'd much rather know that they're viably not able to support you, and you'd much rather get to the truth and start to adjust and actually pivot and create your contingency plan based on real answers. So, and some of them may not be able to share that information at this time. So you also have to understand that as well. The other thing that has come up a fair amount are sponsors are not willing to risk the PR of being attached to a larger event that could cause an outbreak of COVID. So are they willing to keep their name associated with it? We are seeing some of that change in the fall, where the spring and the summer, we saw a lot of organizations that were like, hey, we just do not want to be attached to it. We're starting to see some larger events and mid-size events that are pivoting, and sponsors are willing to go with contingency plan of a hybrid event and keep their name associated. So that may be something that you have to look at. And that may be that, hey, you have pivoted a lot to allow your participants to feel safe and your sponsors to feel safe. And then finally, some of them may not be able to afford it. So are you able to adjust and offer them a lower tier, or add to the years in the future? Maybe I've even heard organizations that have offered more cash up front with lower sponsorship in the following years to help organizations stay viable in the near term, so that the sponsorship continues to provide value over the next 2 to 3 years. So there's alternatives out there. If you have a great relationship with your sponsors, give them a call. You don't have to plead with them, but just be honest with them and have conversations. What will they support? You know, that is individual by organization. A lot of them are not fully behind the idea of a fully virtual event. But we are starting to see more and more sponsors get behind virtual challenges and hybrid. Virtual races are too short and not enough sponsorship impressions a lot of times for sponsorships to see the value. So that's where the hybrid and the virtual challenges have sort of filled that in. If you are going virtual race only, then you need to figure out, you know, can they commit to supporting an event intended to be in person, but going to be virtual if the conditions are required. And then they may have a required minimum number of participants and eyeballs and impressions that they're looking for to make it worth it for them to be retained, or for them to continue sponsorship of your event. So with that, you sort of have to know your own numbers to make sure that you're not devaluing your brand and your event. And be honest with them, try and come up with a contingency plan that both parties can be happy with. So how do you renegotiate? Can you maintain the sponsorship by lowering the financial commitment? I gave you an example of an organization I know took more money up front and actually less cash over the next 3 years just to retain the sponsorship and make them viable this year. Some sponsors have the cash now and some don't have cash at all. So some are willing to kick their sponsorship 2 years down the road or add it to the next year so 2020 isn't viable. Give them alternatives and allow them to say, hey, you don't have to sponsor this year. We're going to fill in that void with just participant revenue, but we want to retain you as a sponsor for 24, and they may be done in 23. So ask them to move their end date by 1 year to retain them as a sponsor. What can you offer them? If it's virtual only, it really does come down to, can you give them eyeballs? And then can you give them some way of driving participants back to their restaurant or their store, or maybe their online site that they have so that they can actually drive business. And in some cases, it may be a legal firm or an organization that's not looking for that. They're looking for pure impressions and just name recognition and being tied to a well-known event in their community. So with that, you sort of need to know the metrics. And do they need to see from a virtual race page views or clicks? And you should know from a high level, the virtual challenges, from what I've seen, are producing roughly about 100 page views per participant. And that's a fair amount of eyeballs for any sponsor to get. Virtual races are going to be a lot lower, and they're probably going to be in the 5 to 10 page views per participant. So that's something that you need to also be aware of. So hybrid considerations. Participant management is very important. When you start to go with a hybrid, that means that participants need to be able to make changes and switch between in-person to virtual and stay within that in-person cap. So we have all the tools at RunSignup to be able to do that. The idea is it gives people a peace of mind that they can sign up for an in-person and switch to virtual, or maybe they signed up for virtual and they feel better about it and they're trained and there's space in that cap to switch over to the in-person. So a lot of that happens at the last minute, just so you guys are aware. We're seeing a ton of movement, whether for registrations or changes, all in the last week. So participants are very hesitant still at this time to make decisive decisions. So they're signing up last minute, they're making changes last minute. So be aware of that. For more expensive events, you can offer premium swag for the virtual option, and that may adjust or justify the same price for both. You can also offer a challenge. So a great example is the Baltimore Marathon or Baltimore Running Festival. They added a 26.2 mile challenge to their event. So now people can actually do more than one event. They can do all of the events, but as a challenge if they wanted. So that's an example of one way to adjust it. So now they're not just getting swag, they're getting an engagement of a challenge when they sign up, so they can do really a whole bunch of different alternatives. And then be clear about your refund policy. Some organizations don't offer refunds. Well, then state you have no refunds. But if the in-person event is canceled, what's going to happen? Will they be transferred to the virtual? Are you going to allow them to defer to next year? Give them information about your plan. That is very important to understand. Participants are also looking for refunds more now than what we saw at the very beginning. They were more willing to allow for a deferral or a transfer to another event. We do have automated refunds where participants can go in and ask for a refund and get the refund with our tools. It's completely up to the organization how they want to set up those refunds. And that might help you drive revenue for your events earlier versus letting people sign up at the last minute. So those are things that you can also factor in. You also should coordinate with your timer. If you're going to put timing out there, you need to know that most adjusted races are doing a rolling start. So they're not allowing a mass start of 300 people or 500 people on a wave, but instead the example of that 500-person race this weekend, they have 4 start times that they're starting people in, but then they're breaking those start times up. And I believe it's 16 people at a time that are starting. And with that, it's rolling start. So those people start, and then there's another 2 minutes and another 16 start, and so forth. Your timer has to know how to do that and has to have the software to be able to pull that off. It's sort of a flexible wave start is basically the idea, is you break up your runners into waves. So we have corral management. A lot of events are just using groups of corrals, let's say 150 people at a time, and then doing the rolling start on those 150 people. So it effectively becomes 4 race starts. Every 20 minutes you have a new start, but those are actually broken up into mini waves as well. And then obviously pre-assigning those waves or corrals and allowing your participants to know when they should start. So you got to email out and communicate with those people. A lot of races this weekend are using the corrals and allowing people to actually sign up for the corral as soon as they are registering. And then from there, they can adjust it if they want. And that allows them to know when they're starting at the time that they register, and communication continues on there. So one of the things that we recommend is keeping in-person and virtual results separate. The reason is that in-person actually can have age group awards. They can have, actual USA track and field times that could be age awards for state championships, records, anything like that that could impact historical numbers. So if you're doing in person, it's a real race, even though if it is a rolling start. So it is something that I would keep separate from virtual results. So virtual strategy. Boy, there's a lot to look at in this, and we can definitely have a long conversation about this. So we tend to break it up into 3 big groups: traditional, community, and causes. So traditional, you're going to have families that can participate together, even if they're far, far apart. So a good example is my mom is a walker. She walks about 8 miles a day, and I've done 2 virtual challenges with her. So she signed up, I signed up, she crushed me. It wasn't even close. I'll admit, I do like 3 miles of running a day, and she does 8 miles of walking. So she'd finish a week or 2 before me most of the time. But it was fun because we communicated about it, and it built a little thing for us to talk about that wasn't COVID. So you also get to highlight runners who have run consecutive years. So even though you've pivoted, you can allow for that tradition of, if you finished 5, the Monument Avenue 10K is a good example. They have a 6.2 club, 6.2 milers, and it's basically anyone that's run all of the 10Ks, all 6.2s for that event. And I believe this year's 21 years. So they have probably 50 or 100 people that have done all 21, and this year they plan to continue that, even though it's virtual. The other's community. So you could feature local sponsors that residents want to see survive. You can partner with other nonprofits in the area that there's an affinity to. You can offer Race Joy with a Race Joy Anywhere solution. So that allows people to run out of their front door and get cheers and know where they are on mile markers and stuff like that. You can even offer custom audio, so you could do local slang. You could highlight local establishments that you want to promote. There's a ton to Race Joy that we could cover. The other obviously is cause-based. So we have a lot of them that are free entry that are doing fundraising. You can do charities that are in need. A great example is the Crescent City Classic in New Orleans. They went right down the road to the World War II Museum and launched a virtual event with them to help the World War II Museum raise almost $100,000. So there's charities all over the country that are definitely suffering a little bit right now and having to pivot in this pandemic. And yet, therefore, you guys could definitely help those charities rely on a virtual to raise money. A lot of those charities rely on money from annual charity events, and you can just enhance their experience or their fundraising efforts by giving them yet another virtual event. So reach out to some of those cause-based ones and see if you can help. this is pretty different, but we like to celebrate what's different. And that will allow you to celebrate how many states you have runners in. You can even do that, how many countries you have runners in. That's another big one that started to happen as well. What family has the most generations participating. You can do local running club support as well. So we have, I want to say, about 1,600 running clubs using RunSignup's club solutions. You can offer discounts to all the local running clubs and try and engage them. You do how are new runners training for their first 5K, and offer a virtual challenge to help those 5K participants. There's a lot of different ways to engage your participants and the spectators. I would say social media contests is a big one. So it could be the funniest outfit, the coolest bridge you crossed, to the funniest route you ran. I've seen a lot of routes where they'll spell out the name of the race or the distance that they run. Things like that are pretty engaging. And now all of a sudden you have a huge social engagement piece. There is another part to that on the charity or the virtual challenge side that I'll talk about in a minute. Hit the big screen. So we're seeing this more and more: Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Live. If you have a local TV station that's willing to help you, you can also go that route. Even radio station support is great. So now all of a sudden they're helping you promote your event, highlight what is going on with your virtual events, and try and highlight some runners and sponsors and charities to sort of drive what missing piece there is right there, which is the sponsorship value and the runner value. So you're really trying to get people to feel like they've been engaged and there's something more than just swag. And then obviously locate local impact of the event, or sorry, communicate the local impact to the event that you've had. So, if you've raised $10,000, tell the people that you've raised $10,000. Show them the big check that you've written to the nonprofit. If you've had 5,000 people in the area that have done the race in the past, and this year you did 3,000, there's nothing wrong with that. Communicate how great it is to have the support of 3,000 local runners to help you weather the pandemic and know that next year is going to be a great event. It's not a bad thing to brag about how you've had a positive impact on the community. Yeah, if you think about it, the reason why I actually joined this industry is because every year I get to help organizations like you get tens of thousands to millions of people off of a couch and running or biking or triathlon. And that has a profound impact on the health of millions of people. So over my life in the industry, I would say that I've had the impact of over 100 million people that have signed up for races that I've somehow been associated with technology. And that's a huge impact to this world. So sponsor options for virtual races. There are some limits to this, but the biggest right now is page views.
Sorry, Shay.
So if you can add, you can use our actual sponsor engine to add all of the sponsors that you have, and every page view that people go on, they will see those sponsorship logos for different sponsors that you have. Those same logos show up in email communication. It's pretty important to give them as many page views as possible. You can also do digital goodie bags. Lastly, another one that I forgot to add here is photos. So you can actually now add a photo, a logo to a photo. So you can take any of your sponsor logos. You can even do a hidden sponsor if you want and have a photo only sponsor and put that on user uploaded photos. So we now support user uploaded photos. All those participants can go out there and do a hybrid or a virtual race, submit all those photos, and now all of a sudden it's tagged to their bib, but at the same time, they can go out and share their photos that they uploaded, or their friends and family can share it. And it might have a Wegmans or a Cornerstone Bank or something like that to help your sponsors. You also do have sponsor options for virtual races, like putting a sponsor on swag. So we've seen a fair amount of that happening. And that's a huge piece to the puzzle is, can you add sponsors to swag and then have new swag that is somewhat related to virtual races? And I totally forgot that I put number 5 here is the watermark on photos. So that I already covered. The last one that I love to do is use our source tracking. So source tracking actually allows you to sort of track which sponsors and which other organizations are driving the most to you. So you have the ability to sort of give them their own unique URL. And then from there, you can offer digital rewards in exchange for a set number of registrations. So it is a barter, if you will, where now all of a sudden you're giving them a code that they have to promote. And in exchange, they're going to have a sponsor logo, either on photos or something else. The idea is that they may have millions of page views or millions of followers on Facebook that can promote your event. And in return, you're going to give them more eyeballs from participants that they may not have already reached. In the RaceJoy side of things, we have a fair amount of really cool ways to engage sponsors. The obvious one is the in-app ads, the banner ads that you can have here. We also have progress alerts, and we can do custom audios even after this alert. So someone can actually come in and they're going to get their RaceJoy alert that they're at mile 1 and their pace is a certain thing and their estimated finish time is a certain thing. And then 30 seconds later, you can do a custom audio file that would be, come see us at Sky Running Shoes. And with that, that is your audio cheer. You can also do custom cheers. We allow 3 custom cheers on each course. So now all of a sudden you can do a shout out if they're running by a Dunkin' Donuts that says, hey, drop by the Dunkin' Donuts right after your run and we'll give you a coffee latte for $5 versus the average $7. So that's another, and then obviously local places of interest are another way of improving it. So people obviously can come in and you can add these as ways for people to know about important things when they're looking through RaceJoy. All right, a plan for swag. You got to create a plan for swag, whether it's in person or virtual. What we tend to recommend is you're looking at a local pickup, shipping all, or doing a half and half model or some sort of mixed model. The local pickup, you actually have some alternatives in here. So I've seen everywhere from people are asking their sponsors to be local pickup locations to schools if they have a whole bunch of kids in a PTA type of an event where the PTAs are now responsible for the pickup, to corporate models where a company is signing up 50 or 100 people, and therefore you as an organizer are going to deliver the 50 to 100 local. And then finally, I have a lot of timers that have pivoted to doing local delivery. So instead of you going to USPS and handing off massive packets to the US Postal Service that may or may not get delivered locally, the timers have taken it on themselves to drive the neighborhoods and deliver those packages to front doors. And therefore, they're taking on those costs of shipping, and you're paying them for the $5 fulfillment fee or $7 fulfillment fee. If you're shipping all, it is convenient for participants because they don't leave their house and it's at the front door. The cost of shipping can be a variable, but it also tends to be about $3.50 for the first pound in the US for a USPS first class. But then beyond that, it can really increase pretty high if you have higher weights. The unreliable deliveries, as you all know, there's a big debate. I'm not going to get political on this. USPS is not always delivering when you want. And if you're going to give them thousands of packages to deliver locally, it may not always get to their front steps when you expect. So be aware of that. It is time intense to also prepare. That is why a lot of timers have taken it on because they're not timing races and they're not preparing bibs and chips and their hardware. So now they have a lot more time. So that is a very good alternative for you guys to look at, is call your timer and ask them if they're doing fulfillment. It is very intense preparation. Even for 1,000 participants, you would be amazed at how long it's going to take you to do packet stuffing and labeling and shipping. The other obviously is half and half. You basically allow participants to make the choice. Are they going to pick it up locally or are they going to get it shipped? And sometimes they can eliminate their shipping cost. You can choose to say, hey, it's free if you pick it up, or it's $10 if you want it shipped. I've had free events that have done that, and it is a local pickup and they have thousands of people that sign up for local pickup of a medal or a shirt that was $5 for this event, and they did fundraising, and then they charged an extra $10 for shipping. So there's alternatives. It can be a little bit difficult to manage, but there are ways around that with either a registration add-on or a custom question. So shipping considerations, I had mentioned, it's about $3.50 for first class, and that changed, I believe, in June. So it used to be 13 ounces for $3.50. Now it's 16 ounces. And again, you sort of have to know that it's really, to get to 16 ounces, you're looking at a smaller medal and a shirt, and that gets you into a poly package, and you can ship it via USPS first class. If you're going to ship anything larger, let's say a poster or a wine glass or something heavy, you're going to go over 16 ounces, and your cost is going to go way up from there. And that has nothing to do with, packaging as much as it has to do with the cost of freight. There are zones, so you can use shipping software like ShipStation, Stamps, Pirate Ship. There's a handful of different ones that do that. Most of them tend to come back at a flat 3.5 if you're doing it at a reasonable weight for your packages. The other thing that I'll make note of is that if you are going to be shipping some larger shirts, you may have some XXL or XXL shirts that weigh a fair amount more than a small or medium, while small and medium are the vast majority of your shirts, or large even, and they all fall in the 16. Be careful to make sure you weigh a package that has a XXL or a XXL shirt, so that you don't all of a sudden get blindsided by, oh, my medal is pretty big, my shirt's small, and now all of a sudden you add a larger shirt and you go over and you have a couple hundred that are costing you $7 or $10 to deliver. International shipping is another one. Hopefully here in the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have our feature out to allow you to do variable shipping rates. And with it, you'll be able to charge a variable shipping amount based on the country or province. So with it, or state in the US. So with it, you would actually, you'd be able to charge for Hawaii and Alaska at a different rate than the continental US, and the same for Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. So that might be a higher cost to deliver. So you want to bake that into the shipping fees, and that will be out here probably in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So making fulfillment easier. I don't know if there really is, but like I said, I would contact your timer is probably the easiest, or a fulfillment company. If you're going DIY, I had mentioned a couple of them: ShipStation, ShipEasy, Pirate Ship. Those are the 3 big ones. Stamps is a little bit older, but still pretty good. Those are 4 viable ones. You better get a process down to how you're going to do it, and try and keep it simple so that you can execute not just with yourself, but you're going to either have volunteers or other employees help you on that. If you're looking for fulfillment companies or timers, we do have the RunSignup.com Go Virtual solution. That portal, if you will give you a fair amount of information on fulfillment as well. Communication, as always, is key. So with that, you want to make sure that you know when your items are shipped and when they arrive. A lot of those software packages, as soon as you upload those participant data files and send the data into ShipStation, and then ShipStation sends it out to USPS, they're also capable of sending out custom emails with their tracking codes and stuff like that. So I would definitely make sure that you communicate and then do follow-up communications as well. Some of those pre-shipping communications may be asking them to verify their shipping address. If you are a race that has been open for in-person and now pivoting, you may want to do that and try and get as many shipping addresses adjusted before you go to virtual, or when you go to virtual. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole bunch of participant addresses that aren't potentially shippable. So I tried to keep it so that there's time at the end, left 15 minutes so that we can either run through questions or even unmute people and allow them to ask their questions. So Herman, what you got for us?
I pretty much got all the questions answered that came in. It was only a few. What a digital goodie bag is, And then if Race Joy only allows for specific tracks for runners to follow.
All right, so a digital goodie bag is a swag bag, much like you get at an expo, but digital. So obviously they're not getting the little pamphlets and flyers about every sponsor that is at your expo. So instead you're doing a virtual one that is going to be engaged through digital means where they can get sponsorship discounts and engagement from sponsors through digital means. So, and then the Race Joy solution or question, there's two parts to Race Joy. So traditionally Race Joy is an in-person race experience, and it improves the race experience for participants and allows spectators to sort of know where their friends and family are on that course. We always supported, I believe, up to 6 or 8 physical courses for a given race. And therefore, when the pandemic hit, we supported virtual races, but we had to have fixed courses. Earlier this year, we released an anywhere solution. So with anywhere, they can run anywhere without a fixed course. But what happens is when they get to those mile markers, they're still given a cheer that they've reached mile marker 1, and one could be in Washington State, I'm in Virginia, and the next person could be in Florida. It doesn't really matter. You're still getting a cheer based on the location on a virtual course or an anywhere course that says at mile 1, we want to give them a cheer. And the finish line, let's say, is a 10K, so that's 6.2 miles, and they are given a finish time. And if you are supporting the virtual results on our platform, those finish times are then published back into the result set. So they get included in the leaderboard. It's pretty cool. Is that it? Come on, people. How many of you guys? We got 80, I think.
We have another one. What is the range of add-on costs you typically see for shipping versus in-person packet pickup?
I would say that most shipping fees are coming in at about $10 is a good amount that we tend to see. So we'll see an organization, and there's a lot to that. So one way that some organizations are working with virtual is they're putting their virtual price at $30 or $35, and then they're requiring a participant to pay for shipping and handling. And that sort of happens at the very end. So participants are already taken through the questions, and then they end up paying $45 for the whole deal. And that's going to have a higher dropout rate on the shopping cart or registration process than if you include shipping at the very beginning. So a lot of organizations include shipping in the overall price, and therefore they're sort of baking that into the variable cost of their budget. So an entry fee of $35 or $40 with fulfillment cost of $7 to $10. I've seen it as low as $5, where they're bringing it in-house and bringing in volunteers to help fill. So then they have packaging and food to the volunteers, and shipping costs for USPS is $3.50. So all in, it's about $5. You're probably not going to find too many fulfillment shops that'll match $5, but there might be some out there. A lot of them, even timers, are coming in at about $7 to $9 for fulfillment, and that's based on how complex your fulfillment is. So are you going to do a whole bunch of swag plus add-ons of like, oh, they can variably add a shirt, another hat, and a hoodie, and now all of a sudden that packet, they call it in the e-commerce world pick and pack. So now you're picking out of a stack of inventory and packing it into a packet. So the pick and pack process becomes a lot more timely and complex. So there's going to be a higher fulfillment cost to that. Hope I answered that question. Don't know if I did. I would say it's $10 is the variable question.
All right. A few more came in. The first one is there any race that is planning for fully virtual as plan A, but plan B is going to be in person?
Not that I'm aware of, not on a larger scale. So, a lot of races, it takes usually months to get a permit. And usually what's happened is the permits have been pulled at the last second or the last month, and therefore they have to go virtual. I can imagine a couple race organizations. I have one in Northern Virginia, EX2 Adventures, that they didn't go virtual, but instead they created a wait list. And they allowed people to sign up, and they said, hey, you can then make the choice as soon as we know if we can go in person. He went hybrid with his events this September. So he's got, I want to say a 600 cap for one of his half marathons, and then everyone else is virtual. So those people that were on the wait list got first right to go and do the in-person. So that's not really an answer of, yes, I've seen a virtual go to in-person, but it is feasible. It's just really hard to pull off logistics, and it could be a smaller race that could do that, but I haven't heard of anyone that's done that as of yet.
I'm trying to get the questions in order. A few just came and I scrolled. Oh, here we go. This will be my first virtual to set up. It is replacing our golf tournament. How long does it take to set up? An estimate is fine.
So experts like timers and RunSignup employees can probably do it in 1 to 2 hours. To be fair to an organization like yourself, I would expect a week. There's a lot to learn about our platform, and you want to get everything right between communication and artwork and making it look pretty and communicating to the participants the way you want. So if you had all of that already prepackaged, then you might be able to pull it off in 1 to 2 days. But most of the time, it's going to take a good week of work to pull off a good, well-looking virtual race. And that's not 40 hours of constant work. That's probably 2 or 4 hours a day for a week. You have to work for wait for artists. You have to sort of work on your communication messaging and stuff like that. And sometimes you have questions for our staff, and we're not going to respond in the first 30 seconds that you send an email. So, bake in some time, and probably a good week is a good estimate.
Right. And there were a few similar questions that came in, so I'm going to loop them together.
Sure.
If a racer got COVID and tracked it to the race, does race day insurance cover that liability? And also, are there sample COVID waivers or any verbiage for COVID that is being used in waivers?
Ooh, that's probably above my pay grade even, Herman. I know I only get paid peanuts, but to answer your question on tracking to a race, that is definitely a lawyer question that I don't know if I want to figure out. To me, there are waivers that have been updated. I think RRCA has a really good one. Whoever is your sanctioning body, I would reach out to them and ask them for theirs. If you don't use the sanctioning body for your insurance, then I would talk to your insurance provider that's providing insurance for your organization to get waivers. You can also go on to that Go Virtual URL, and I believe we have some updated waivers there. And then finally, we have a looking forward document that is a living document that has some waivers in it as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but really can you ask the track tracing one again, Herman, just to make sure I don't miss it?
It was if a runner has COVID and they bring it to your race, where is it worded? Does race day insurance cover that liability?
My guess would be every insurance is going to be different. Almost every insurance provider that I have talked to said that there is a fair amount of them that have exclusions to pandemics. So, and then there's different types of insurance that we're talking about. So participant insurance that is usually provided by Allianz definitely has an exclusion for pandemics. Some race organization or some sanctioning bodies have exclusions for pandemics. Some of them don't. So I would definitely reach out to your insurance provider of choice and ask them that specific question, because I'm
pretty sure that none of them will cover that. Make sure your waiver covers the obligation. And we just put out a little blog from a third-party app to that kind of helps manage that. and affirms that. But I think the way to look out is if somebody sued your race, got COVID, you want to use your waiver to go sue the person that, broke their promise or something. But there's so much uncertainty in this that it's one of the reasons why people are kind of avoiding real races.
And for anyone that doesn't know, that individual right there is Bob Bickle, the CEO of RunSignup.
And I don't provide the.
So Herman, do we have any other questions?
Yes, there are currently 2 left that I'm seeing. First one are in-person races restricting registration to in-state participants / residents only.
I don't know of anyone that's doing that right now. That could be yet another legal battle. But I mean, we see New York and Florida in their legal battles of who's restricting who. So it would not be impossible to do on our platform. The way that you would implement that is you would hide the state in, as a question, and then create a custom question that only allows the state of Virginia as an example. And therefore, they would have to state that they're from the state of Virginia. There is no way to validate that they are really living in the state of Virginia. There's no open API to driver's license databases or anything like that we would be able to go, yes, Eric Cohn really lives in the state of Virginia. It's just not feasible right now.
I do know of one race in Pennsylvania that has had people previously registered, and Pennsylvania has a list of states that people are required to quarantine if they're coming from. So that race director took it upon themselves to take anyone from those states, remove them, refund them, let them know that he just didn't want to be put in an awkward situation there. It's a relatively small race. I don't believe he got any pushback for doing that, but I think it's kind of up to you how you want to handle that.
Yeah, so in that scenario, what I would do is if your state is requiring quarantine, I would reach out to everyone in those states that are required to quarantine and offer them a hybrid virtual option is probably the best. Just state that you're not willing to accept the risk of them potentially bringing it, and therefore here's an alternative. If they don't like it, then you can offer them a refund. If they can validate that they are living in the state, then ask for valid proof that they work and live in this case, Pennsylvania.
All right, and this seems to be our last question. We set ours up as a live event in February of 2021. They have been very transparent to their participants that will be possibly doing it virtual. The one thing they did not include is shipping. Thoughts on how to approach this moving forward?
So the first thing that I would do is immediately turn on shipping address verification so that one, you're getting valid shippable addresses. Moving forward, you can either adjust your price or you can wait a couple weeks and we'll have that shipping feature out that you can add shipping fees onto any registration. So there's a lot of different ways. If you're gonna add shipping fees, you either increase the price or you can do a registration add-on that adds $5 or $10 for fulfillment cost, shipping cost. So there's going to be a couple scenarios out there. I would go with making sure that you're getting available shipping addresses. Valid shipping address is probably your most important thing because there is a hidden cost for shipping. And that hidden cost is that you're going to get return packages and you're going to get participants that don't receive packages and they're going to be upset about it. The other hidden cost on this is that they got a shirt size that doesn't fit. So be aware that you're going to have a 1% of people that are like, well, my medium doesn't work. Do you have any larges? Well, guess what? That's now another $5 of cost to you to get them a large. And you don't even want the medium back because that's going to be another $5 to get it back. So.
One question came in. This is probably more on the legal side of things, but it's in regards to insurance. Do you need insurance for a virtual run with a possibility of having a hybrid?
So I would recommend it because the cost is so low. To get virtual insurance or virtual race insurance, it's usually under $200. And Running USA has some virtual race insurance. RRCA has virtual race insurance for existing organizations. Those are two off the top of my head. Bob might have some others. Is the Race Insure organization offering it now, Bob? Do you know?
I don't. Well, yeah, Scott is offering something, and it's based upon RaceJoy.
Okay.
So Houston Casualty will cover a virtual race as long as participants are using Race. But if they're not using RaceJoy, then they're not covering it. So it's a good product, but it's perfect.
Got it. So again, you can go look at runningusa.org, and they have some, and then rrca.org, they have some as well. Those are the two that I know of off the top of my head. It's very affordable. It covers you for the idea that a participant signs up for your virtual race and they get injured out on their own streets, from what I understand.
And that is it for questions.
301, we nailed it. Thank you all for coming. If you need to reach out to me, my email address is Eric, E-R-I-C, at runsignup.com. Feel free to reach out. I obviously know a fair amount of you guys, and hopefully Bob doesn't email me too much because he really loves to fill my
By the
inbox.
way, there's some really nice comments in here, and you do not want to strike ego, okay?
I haven't seen any of them. I've been too busy. So.
People are saying it was a good presentation.
Oh, jeez.
Good information.
I'm trying.
How about that?
You know, we're very fortunate as an organization. What I will admit to is that I get to share information that I've pulled from hundreds of organizations that work with us. So I'm looking at my screen and I have a handful of organizations that I get to talk with every week and see what they're doing and how they're doing it and learn from them. And all I'm doing is sharing some of those great ideas that they've given us, and therefore allows you guys to all pivot and hopefully adjust. So good luck with everyone adjusting their missed time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.